Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Tonight, we would like to discuss the issue of 45 years of rigged elections in Zimbabwe. That is something. The great scientist Albert Einstein said insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We have participated in flawed elections for 45 years and counting, expecting a different result. That is absolutely amazing. What we'd like to do tonight is I've got Ben here, and we hope that some people will be able to join us later on. And for the listeners, you're welcome to join us. The link is given at the bottom of your screen there. You can join us anytime you want. The rules are very simple. We'll start with Ben. Ben will give us a presentation of why we have had 45 years and counting of rigged elections. The only thing I would emphasize is that Ben, just focus on one issue. Don't bring up many issues. I'll give you 5 minutes or so to give your presentation on that particular issue. Then we'll follow it up with a few comments and clarifications and questions. And then I'll give my own presentation of why we are in this mess. And then you can follow it up with your questions and comments. And then we'll go on to the next issue or a build up on your original one. Okay. Shall we start with you then, Ben?
Thank you. Good day to you and good day to our viewers. It is amazing that, after 45 years, we still don't get it. We still don't understand the source of our pain and suffering. We still don't understand how to stop the pains and the suffering. And with each move that we are making, it gets worse. The problem in Zimbabwe is based on our politics. And I'll quote, Kwame Nkrumah. He says, "Seek ye first the political kingdom, and all these other things will fall into place." You're talking about the economic, aspect of the economy. You're talking about the social and so forth. They will fall in place. Once you have good governance, you get accountability. You get traceability. You get a leader that knows and respects the people, because he is a leader that is chosen by the people and will have to stand for the people. Now, if you have none of these, you are going to have ZANU PF, if I may be direct. This is where our problem is. And a lot of people still don't get it. That our problem originally starts by us participating in rigged elections. And knowing fully well that ZANU PF will rig the election and their rule will perpetuate our own suffering. It's simple. It's not a rocket science where you would expect you know us to really think deep and hard. It is simple. And what makes it more simple is that we have been advised on these topics and truths. But lo and behold, 45 years, we are still bouncing left, right, and center. We still can't get it.
Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, so it is amazing, why it has taken us so long on the obvious. It's really, discouraging that, it's not hard. I think, just the basic mind, the layman can understand what really is going on and what is required for us to have good governance. And the good thing is we have been told, so it's not something that we have to come up you know for ourselves with we have already been given. So why are we then still willing participants in rigged elections?
Thank you very much, Ben. Just to follow up on that point. I totally agree with you that Kwame Nkrumah was right in saying, seek you first the political kingdom. But if you go back to 1980, I think it would be unfair to expect that the people could resist the uh, fait accompli that was presented to them by ZANU-PF. Because ZANU-PF in that year said if we don't win the elections, the Bush war would continue. What did you expect them to do?
Now, but let me put it this year. I saw a video, just in 1980, before ZANU-PF actually came into power. And there was a white journalist that asked a very, very interesting question. And he was asking people from all walks of life that were just, moving about. And people were excited that at the prospect of finally having to vote, finally having to choose their own, person or individual to represent them. But his question was, what if Mugabe fails to deliver? The answers that came out of there were shocking. Some said, we don't want to think about it. Some said, it's impossible, he's not going to fail. Those are important. It was an important question, and none responded. They basically buried their head in the sand. If again, I'll quote Ian Smith. Ian Smith said, for you to have a vote, you have to understand what it's all about. Did we understand? I don't think so. The moment ZANU PF made it about themselves, that was a red flag. Wouldn't it be my then follow-up question to you would be, wouldn't it have been easier to stop ZANU PF after they had just uttered that sentence before they became government?
Well, I think the case I presented to you, yes, I agree that there are some people who were naive enough to believe that independence was the panacea to all our problems. That ZANU PF uh, were great rulers, intelligent, visionary leaders, and so forth. That cannot be denied. But the case I presented to you still is valid. If you are a voter and you're presented with somebody who is holding a gun and he says, if we don't win the elections, the Bush war would continue. I think you'll have to be fully hard to argue with somebody like that. That is the situation I was presenting to you. In other words, as much as they would have understood what Kwame Nkrumah was saying, when you're presented with somebody who has the gun, and the same situation was repeated actually, if you think about it, in 2008, when ZANU PF realized that they had lost the election, and then they blatantly rigged the vote count of the March vote that year to justify the runoff. And during the runoff, they brutalized the people. Under those situations, you really cannot expect the people to do anything other than to do what ZANU PF wanted. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, but we have to take into consideration that ZANU PF was not the only, you know, organization that was involved in the war of liberation. Some people went to war because of their love for an independent country, despite political affiliations. I believe that they should count as a factor to say not all that went to the war of liberation were Zanla forces and were under ZANU PF. There were many other independent, those that were in the ZIPRA and so forth. One thing that we mustn't, try and give an excuse for our shortcomings is trying to find that excuse. Yes, I mean, we've had different, threats, not only from ZANU PF, but all around the world. But how have you handled such a threat is the best answer to that. We have to take the responsibility to say we did not think things through when we got that vote. Very few people understood what that vote meant. And this is why we are in this mess. Not because ZANU PF threatened. It was us who decided to bury our heads in the sand by saying exactly what you are saying to say. We were threatened. ZANU PF was not government. It was easier then than now. and we have to take responsibility. And besides, at independence, I sincerely believe, because the video evidence is there, of the celebration that was happening. The people were happy. And I think the same people that were happy when Mugabe was ousted by Mnangagwa, that is the same. Let's look at that as the same example. We wanted to see Ian Smith's backside, and we did not know the devil that we were inviting. And the same thing can be said when we removed Mugabe. Oh, millions were in the street. Were they forced? I don't think so. They went there because of naivety. We did not understand. And up to today, this is why our topic says 45 years in, and we still don't understand.
Well, I think I would have commented on that point differently. I believe that there is instances when you are confronted with a regime that has got the ability to impose itself, as ZANU-PF has been able to do, you have no choice. I don't think in 1980, even if I was there myself to vote, I wasn't there, I wasn't in the country, but even if I was there, I would have done anything other than vote for ZANU-PF. Because at that time, many people were tired of the war. And again, in 2008, during the runoff, when you are confronted with a regime where nearly 500 people were killed, and that reality forced people to abandon their desire for political change. I think that maybe at this point it will be pertinent to play a video of Professor Ibo Mandaza telling the story of what happened in 2008. So I think when that reality is there, you cannot run away from it. You've got to admit it's there, and as much as you would want to consolidate your right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country, which I agree is very important, under those situations, you cannot. Here is what Professor Ibo Mandaza said on the subject.
I also know that Mugabe conceded defeat in 2008. He found Mbeki and Obasanjo to concede defeat. I hope that Thabo Mbeki and Obasanjo will one day make that public. But one of them, I won't say which one, told me that Mugabe phoned them that Saturday night and said, look, I lost the election and I concede defeat. And I know that Mugabe stuck to his guns. I was prepared to go. His wife was since bags packed to go somewhere on the following day when Mnangagwa and Chiwenga approached him and said, you stay where you are. And then they contrived the runoff, sadly with the help of South Africa. And runoff took place, very violent. 360 people were killed. The South African, I came here as part of a delegation to Cape Town to see members of the ANC. I don't want to mention names, they're my friends. I saw them, and through them, a cabinet committee subcommittee of South African cabinet was set up on the Zimbabwe issue. It was on the basis of that cabinet committee that South Africa did not recognize the runoff. And indeed, it was the basis of that committee that Thabo sent the generals to South Africa, to Zimbabwe. I met them, and I was one of the few to have read the report, because I was flying to Joburg in the company of General Romano, who was a friend. He passed away, no? So, yeah. And I also took people who had lost their hands in the violence to the South African embassy in Harare. And Romano broke down in tears. How can a liberation movement treat these people like that? He was a broken man. So there's no doubt at all here in South Africa as to the brutality of the regime in Harare. So it amazes me, it angers me, in fact, when I hear the nonsense coming out of people like Mbalula's mouth. They know it. And the report has never been published, the general's report, to this day. That tells you. Is it complicit behavior? I don't know. But to get back to 2000.
Well, the point was made there. I don't know whether Ben, you would want to come in and comment on that video clip. Sorry, Ben. Do you want to come in?
Yes. You know, I do understand the brutality that the people of Zimbabwe have faced at the hands of ZANU-PF's hold on power. And I do believe they would have made it impossible for Zimbabwe to rule itself except they be at the helm. I do accept that. But we have to realize at one point there will have to be sacrifices made. I don't believe we are simply just going to talk or also away to ZANU-PF and they will just freely say, oh, okay, now the people have decided. They are not people oriented. Let's get that straight. But we cannot say just because ZANU-PF said this and we go along with it. If we truly want Zimbabwe, there has to be a time where we draw the line. And I believe we had help and we still have help out there. But first of all, we have to help ourselves. The journalist, and I'll go back to the example that I gave in the beginning, the journalist that asked that question, what if Mugabe fails, was helping us. Think about it. Though you are happy, think, what steps do you have? And that question there is still lingering and still hasn't been answered and still deserves an answer. Because we could not answer that day. We replaced Mugabe for Mnangagwa. And that question would have been, what if Mnangagwa fails? Because the DNA was there. It is coming from the same thing. And I sincerely believe everybody that was out in the street celebrating Mnangagwa should hang their heads in shame, especially the learned. They should have known. They know the guy. They know the DNA within ZANU-PF. But again, we decided to bury our heads in the sand. And now here we are. The guy is now threatening to take it up to even 2030. Is up to, the whole thing is a mess. So the sacrificing part and people being brutalized, that is ZANU-PF. Right now, there is no freedom of assembly. There is no freedom of speech. That is who they are. But I mean, at some point, we have to be realistic. Something has to give. And I said, the good thing is we've got help out there. But the help can only come when we decide to help ourselves. Because just like school, you go through and the teacher teaches, and then the teacher gives you exercises. You do the exercise, you fail, they give you corrections. This is the same thing where you have organizations like SADC, AU, EU, they come together and come and observe our elections and how we are doing our democratic practice. They mark accordingly, and then they give us the corrections. But then when they give us the corrections, and then we close the book, what do we expect? Again, we're doing the same thing that the first journalist asked. What if?
Thank you very much, Ben. I think I would like to close this discussion on and emphasize the point that I think the people, as much as they were given a hard choice, if you are being told that if we don't win the elections, the Bush War would continue. Yes, I would have voted to end the Bush War. But I think at the back of their minds, they should also have realized that this was not what they had been fighting for. And therefore, then per se, prepare for themselves to fight back. And I agree that we are now talking of 45 years after independence, and we still have a de facto one-party state. If the people have been fighting back, the answer has got to be no. 2008, yes, they tried to fight back. When they were given the chance to vote ZANU-PF out, they did vote ZANU-PF out. And then the regime stepped back again and took over. That is to be regretted. Yes, they had no option in that runoff but to elect Mugabe. But to be fair to SADC, SADC stepped in and denied ZANU-PF political legitimacy, forcing the regime to go into the GNU. And this is where the people failed themselves. Because during the GNU, it was the golden opportunity for the country to finally force ZANU-PF to implement the democratic reforms, to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. Unfortunately, we failed to implement even one reform. And what is worse, even to this day, there are many Zimbabweans out there who do not even appreciate that the GNU, the 2008 to 2013 GNU, was the golden opportunity for the country to implement the reforms. Ignorance comes, like everything else, with a price tag. And we paid dearly for that. Because we should have realized that MDC guys have sold out and they should have put them under pressure. We have never done so. And Zimbabweans still continue to follow the opposition MDC, Triple C guys sheepishly, like sheep to the slaughter. Democracy demands that the people should be educated, knowledgeable, objective, and diligent. We've not been that. That would be my comment on that point. I think we need to wake up to that reality. Thanks so much, Ben. Do you want to give your closing remarks?
In closing, I would say the answer lies with us. The power to free Zimbabwe lies with its citizens. But we have to make that bold decision. We can either continue participating in rigged elections and hope for the impossible, or we face the truth. That we were just being conned into doing so. The time for us to walk away from the question, what if, is over. We have to now look at the hard and tough questions directly. We have been given answers to and solutions to our problems. So half the battle has already been done for us. But we need to do our part. And nobody else can do that. So it is now up to us. Do we continue participating in rigged elections? Or we stand up like Tanzanians and say, no, we will not be used. And then we will fight for our true right, a right to a free, fair, and credible election. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you very much for those of you who were listening, and we hope you'll be able to join us tomorrow for another open discussion. We'll pick another topic for tomorrow's discussion. The link for that discussion is being shown at the bottom of your screen. And we use the same link Saturdays and Sundays. So even if you can't make it tomorrow, any Saturday, we always use the same studio. And it is the same link. So again, thank you very much, Ben, and thank you to the administrator and to those who were able to join us. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.